Silence shattered like glass. Emma Valenti, 7 years old in a lavender nightgown embroidered with tiny pearls, stood in the marble hallway of the East Wing and could not breathe. Her small hand flew to her throat. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Her skin, moments ago flushed with the warmth of sleep, began to turn purple. The piece of hard candy lodged in her airway was no bigger than a thumbnail. It might as well have been a stone. She stumbled forward, her bare feet slipping on the polished marble, her eyes bulging with a terror that only a child suffocating can know. Her mouth worked soundlessly. Her small body convulsed. 3 members of the household staff stood frozen 30 feet away near the servants' kitchen, their hands suspended in mid-gesture, their minds unable to process what their eyes were seeing. One of them began to scream. And then Sofia Harper appeared. She did not run. She moved with purpose, her black uniform dress catching the light from the crystal chandelier overhead, her calloused hands already positioning themselves with the certainty of someone who had spent 3 years preparing for exactly this moment. 3 years ago, at the community center on Capitol Hill, she had taken a free CPR class taught by a nurse volunteer. She had paid attention. She had written down every step in a spiral notebook she could no longer afford. Tonight, in this mansion worth more than the entire block where she lived, that knowledge was the only thing standing between Emma Valenti and death. Sofia's palms pressed against the small of Emma's back with controlled force. One hand supporting the child's torso. One hand delivering sharp, upward thrusts into the soft space beneath her sternum. The motion was mechanical, practiced in her mind 1,000 times on a CPR dummy with a painted smile. Thrust. Again. Again. The piece of candy shot from Emma's mouth like a bullet. It clattered across the marble floor and disappeared into the shadow beneath an 18th-century table worth more money than Sofia had earned in her entire life. Emma gasped. Her small body convulsed with the shock of air returning to her lungs. She coughed. She wept. Her entire frame trembled against Sofia's chest. Sofia held her. She did not speak English in this moment. She spoke in Spanish, in the language of her mother, in words soft as prayer. Está bien, mi amor. Respira. Solamente respira. You are safe. You are alive. Breathe with me. The nanny rushed forward and Sofia released Emma into her arms without protest, without expecting gratitude, without lifting her eyes to meet anyone's gaze. She stepped back. She smoothed the front of her uniform with the palms of her hands. A thread hung loose from the neckline and she tucked it beneath the fabric. Then she turned toward the servants' corridor. 15 feet away, in the doorway that separated the East Wing from the main hallway, Aleandro Valenti stood motionless. He wore a charcoal suit tailored in Milan by a man who had dressed crime bosses and senators indiscriminately for 40 years. His white dress shirt was open at the collar. His dark hair, silvered at the temples, was swept back from a face carved from stone by decades of decisions that had broken men's bones and built empires of blood and silence. His eyes were a grey so dark they appeared black in this light. A scar ran from the outer corner of his left eye down to his jawline, pale against his olive skin, a permanent record of violence he had inflicted or received, no one was certain which. Those eyes tracked Sofia Harper as she walked away from his daughter. Sofia did not see him. She kept her gaze fixed on the marble floor, on the pattern of black and white squares that seemed to stretch infinitely beneath her feet. She had learned long ago that invisibility was a survival skill. A maid who saw too much, who made eye contact, who drew attention to herself, was a maid who might be accused of theft or disrespect or anything else a household might need to blame on someone disposable. Sofia was disposable. She disappeared into the servants' corridor, and the sound of her footsteps on the narrow back staircase faded into silence. Aleandro did not move. His hands remained at his sides. His expression did not change. But something shifted in the quality of his stillness, a predator's focus, the moment a hunter identifies wounded prey in long grass. He turned to Vinnie Moretti, his lieutenant, a man who had worked for him for 15 years without question and without mercy. Their eyes met. "Find out everything about her," Aleandro said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, each word measured and certain. Her name. Where she lives. Who her family is. Every detail. I want to know her like I know my own heartbeat. Vinny nodded once and withdrew. But what Sofia did not know, as she climbed those narrow back stairs toward the third-floor servant quarters, was that the man who had watched her save his daughter was not a man who forgave debts. He was not a man who forgot a face. His attention, once earned, was the most dangerous thing that could happen to anyone in the geography of Seattle's underworld. She did not know that her life had just pivoted on a single moment. She did not know what was coming. 12 days earlier. Sofia Harper sat on the edge of a mattress that had lost its spring support sometime during the Obama administration, counting $34 in cash with the precision of her accountant managing a Fortune 500 company's annual budget. $1 bills. 3 tens. 4 ones. The coins, quarters mostly, she kept in a mason jar beneath the sink. $34. 14 days until the eviction notice became law. The room was 7 feet by 9 feet. It had one window that faced an alley filled with dumpsters and broken glass. The paint on the walls had been white once, perhaps in the 1980s. Now it was the color of old teeth, yellowed and stained by decades of tenants who had lived here temporarily before the universe moved them somewhere else: prison, overdose, family reunion, miracle. Sofia had been here for 8 months. She was one of the lucky ones. She still had a job. She had almost had hope. The eviction notice sat on the wooden crate that served as her nightstand, red text on an official form stamped with the seal of King County. The landlord was Douglas Hale. He had been her landlord for 2 years, long before she moved to this room. Long before everything collapsed into wreckage. She did not look at the notice. She had read it 17 times already. Instead, she returned the cash to an envelope made from the blank back of an old grocery receipt, sealed it with a single piece of tape, and placed it in the manila folder marked emergency only that contained the last fragments of her financial life. In another folder, she kept the police report that had never led to an arrest. In another folder, she kept the screenshots of messages Douglas had sent her at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m., at 6:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when she was supposed to be working a shift at the diner. I know where you live now, Sofia. I know where you work. You owe me everything. You know what I could do. You know what Victoria wants from you. Don't make me show her where you are. The last message had arrived 3 days ago. Sofia stood. She was 31 years old but looked 47. The mirror above the sink told her this every morning without judgment or pity. Her dark hair, once thick and shiny, had thinned with stress and poor nutrition. Her eyes, which had been warm brown in her photographs from before, now carried the hollow quality of someone who had learned that hoping was a luxury that destroyed you slowly. She dressed in the dark. Her work uniform hung from a nail on the wall. Black dress. White apron. Black shoes with the sole held together by duct tape and belief. She checked her appearance in the mirror. Her hair was bound back in a braid. No makeup, she could not afford it. The scar on her left wrist, thin and white as a ghost, was hidden beneath the long sleeve of her dress. The clock on her phone said 4:44 a.m. Her shift at the diner started at 5:30. The commute took 30 minutes on 2 different bus lines. She would arrive with 3 minutes to spare, as she always did. She would not eat breakfast. She could not afford breakfast. She pulled the thin jacket over her shoulders. It had not been winter in Seattle for 3 weeks, but the mornings were still cold and the jacket was all she had. She checked her pocket. Yes. The envelope with $34. Every bill within reach. Every quarter accounted for. She locked the door behind her. The lock had been broken for 6 months, but the gesture was habit. She descended the narrow staircase. The smell, a combination of mildew, stale cigarette smoke, and something organic she did not want to identify, seemed stronger in the darkness before dawn. 3 blocks away, a black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows pulled to the curb. Vinnie Moretti stepped out. He was muscular and broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that cost more than Sofia's annual rent. His shoes were Italian leather. His watch was real gold. He carried the particular quality of danger that comes from knowing exactly how many ways you can hurt a person and having done several of them. He pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket and studied the address on the building in front of him. The address matched. He looked at the photograph, a maid from the Valenti mansion, dark hair, tired eyes, taken from the security footage when she had walked past the camera at 6:15 p.m. yesterday. He climbed the stairs. Sofia was already gone. The diner was called Rosa's Place, though Rosa had died in 2007 and her nephew Trevor ran it now on a thin margin and a prayer he was not sure God heard anymore. The light was harsh fluorescent white. The vinyl booths were split at the seams. The coffee machine hissed like something dying slowly. Sofia had worked here for 4 years. She tied her apron around her waist and clocked in at 5:26 a.m. Her manager, a woman named Carol with bleached blonde hair and a perpetually exhausted expression, nodded at her without speaking. The breakfast rush would start at 6:06 a.m. Construction workers. Over-the-road truckers. Men whose hands were calloused and whose wallets were thin. Sofia had learned 4 years ago that tips from these men averaged 75 cents per table. She had stopped hoping for more. She filled the coffee carafes. She restocked the napkin dispensers. She cleaned the counter with a rag that smelled like it had been used for the same purpose for approximately 3 years. At 6:27 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. A man in a black suit entered. He did not look like someone who ate at diners. He looked like someone who made decisions about whether other people would keep eating at all. His eye scanned the room with the methodology of someone taking inventory of inventory. He sat at a booth in Sofia's section. Sofia approached him. Her voice was careful, neutral, practiced. "Coffee?" "Yes," Vinny said. He did not look at her directly. "And information?" Sofia's hands, holding the coffee pot, trembled slightly. She set the cup down, poured without spilling, and stepped back. "I don't know what you mean." "Your name is Sofia Harper," Vinny said. He still was not looking at her. He was looking at the menu. "You live at 1247 Spruce Street, Apartment 7. You work here Monday through Saturday 5:33 a.m. to 2 p.m., and Wednesday nights you work at the Valenti mansion as a maid. You owe money to someone named Douglas Hale. There is an eviction notice on your apartment with a 14-day deadline." Sofia's entire body went still. The coffee pot hung suspended in her hand. Vinny finally looked at her. His eyes were a flat black, like a shark's eye, containing no light and no mercy. "Mr. Valenti would like to offer you a position. Better pay. Housing included. Protection." Sofia set the coffee pot down on the table with a sound like an explosion. "Who is Mr. Valenti?" she whispered. "The man whose daughter you saved," Vinny said. "The man whose attention you just earned." He placed a business card on the table. It contained an address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood and a phone number with no name attached. "You have 1 hour to decide," Vinny said. He stood, left a $50 bill on the table, and walked out. Sofia stared at the card. The $50 bill sat on the table like evidence of something that had not happened, something that could not possibly be real. Carol called from the kitchen, "Table 4 needs their order." Sofia did not move. She was thinking about the eviction notice. She was thinking about the messages from Douglas Hale. She was thinking about what Victoria Ashford could do, what she had already done to other women, what she was capable of when she wanted something badly enough. She was thinking about the fact that 14 days was not enough time to save a life. She picked up the business card. The paper felt expensive. Outside, the rain began to fall, a cold November rain that cut through Seattle's pre-dawn darkness like a blade wrapped in ice, and somewhere in the city, a timer had begun counting down toward something neither of them could stop anymore. Sofia Harper had just made a choice without fully understanding what she was choosing. The marble floors of the Valenti mansion stretched out like an endless ocean of white and gray, each stone catching the morning light and throwing it back in sharp, deliberate angles. Sofia Harper moved across them on her hands and knees, her black uniform hanging loose on her frame, a frame that had grown thinner with each month of rationing, each night spent choosing between heating the apartment and eating dinner. She was 32 years old, but her hands belonged to someone much older, the skin roughened and cracked from 8 years of scrubbing other people's homes, other people's mistakes, other people's lives. The Valenti mansion occupied 3 city blocks in Seattle's most exclusive neighborhood. 28 rooms. 14 bathrooms. A kitchen larger than Sofia's entire apartment. She had worked there for exactly 4 days, moving through the halls like a ghost, exactly as Mrs. Chen had instructed. You are invisible here. Do not look the family in the eye. You clean, you leave, you collect your pay every Friday. $2,400 a month. Sofia had never held that much money in her life. The problem was that the eviction notice in her coat pocket said she had 12 days before that money would matter to nobody. It was a dry October morning when everything began to shift, though Sofia did not know it yet. The leaves outside the east-facing windows had turned the color of rust and dried blood. The household staff moved through their routines with the precision of a perfectly programmed machine. In the kitchen, the sous chef prepared Elena Valenti's breakfast: egg white omelette, fresh fruit, organic toast. In the sitting room, a woman Sofia had never seen before was arranging white flowers in a crystal vase, her movements deliberate, practiced, belonging to someone who had never had to wonder where her next meal would come from. That woman was Victoria Ashford. She was 53 years old, with platinum blonde hair blow-dried into submission and a face that had been surgically preserved into an expression of perpetual disdain. She wore a Hermes scarf that cost more than Sofia earned in a month. She was smiling, but her smile contained no warmth, the kind of smile worn by someone accustomed to other people's pain being a source of personal amusement. Victoria did not know Sofia Harper existed. Sofia was the help. Sofia was invisible. But in the East Wing, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Valenti was about to change that calculus entirely. Emma was the kind of child who still believed the world operated on kindness rather than power, a belief that would either be burned out of her or become the thing that saved her. She had dark eyes like her father's and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She was eating breakfast, her own version, which the chef had prepared with extra butter because Emma liked extra butter, when she picked up a grape and popped it into her mouth. The grape was larger than the others. The grape was not supposed to have been in the fruit bowl at all. It had come from the decorative arrangement that Victoria had just placed on the dining room table. Emma began to choke. The sound came first, a terrible, gasping noise that belonged to something wounded and panicked. Then came the silence. Then came the father's voice, sharp and immediate, "Call the doctor." But the doctor was 15 minutes away, and Emma's face was turning the color of bruised plums, and her small hands were clawing at her own throat in a way that would replay in Aleandro Valenti's nightmares for years to come. Sofia was in the hallway when she heard it. She was carrying a bucket of soapy water and her thoughts were elsewhere, on the eviction notice, on the text message that had come through at 3:22 a.m. from a number that never identified itself but that she recognized in her bones. "I know where you work now, Sofia. You cannot hide from what you owe." She dropped the bucket. Water spread across the marble floor in a dark stain that looked like blood. Sofia did not notice. She was already moving toward the sound, her body operating on some instinct older than fear, some knowledge that lives were disappearing and time was doing what it always did, running away from people like her. Emma Valenti was turning blue. Her mother, Elena, was screaming, a sound like glass breaking. The household staff had frozen in that particular way that people do when confronted with something that exceeded their training, their authority, their right to interfere. The nanny was on the phone with 911. The chef had his hand over his mouth. Sofia pushed through them without apology, without hesitation, without the careful invisibility that was supposed to protect her. She positioned herself behind Emma, placed her hands in the exact spot she had learned years ago from a YouTube video at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep, and pressed upward with a force that came from somewhere deeper than her own body. It came from 8 years of accumulated rage, from every night spent terrified, from every person she had failed to save before she learned there was no saving anyone but yourself. The grape came free. It flew across the room and hit the wall with a sound like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Emma gasped, a long, terrible, beautiful inhalation that pulled air back into her lungs. She began to cry. Her mother began to cry. The staff resumed breathing. Sofia was still holding her. Her hands, the rough and damaged hands of someone who had no right to be touching a Valenti, were holding the small dark head against her chest. She could feel Emma's heart racing like a trapped bird, feel the terror coming off the child in waves, feel the absolute wrongness of the fact that this fragile thing had been seconds away from ceasing to exist. "It is okay," Sofia whispered. Her voice was the voice of someone who had held suffering so many times that it had become her native language. "You are safe now. You are going to be fine. You are here, you are breathing, you are alive." Emma's crying began to quiet. Behind them, Victoria Ashford stood perfectly still, the crystal vase still in her hands, her face an expression of shock that quickly calcified into something else, something that looked like fury at having been upstaged, at having her moment of dominance interrupted by an invisible woman, at being forced to acknowledge that someone other than herself had power in this room. That was when Aleandro Valenti appeared in the doorway. He was 42 years old, 6'2", with the kind of physical presence that made doorways feel smaller when he occupied them. His suit was black, tailored in Milan, worth more money than Sofia had seen in her entire life. His hair was dark and expensive, silvered slightly at the temples in a way that made him look like a man who had aged through difficulty rather than time. His eyes were storm grey, the color of rain before lightning strikes, and right now those eyes were fixed on Sofia Harper with the intensity of someone who had just watched the impossible happen. In those eyes was the beginning of everything that would come after. "What is your name?" he asked. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, the kind of voice that did not require raising to be heard, that carried authority simply through existing. Sofia still had her hands on his daughter. She was still wearing the black uniform. She was still invisible, or supposed to be. "Sofia," she said. "Sofia Harper." She did not look him in the eye. Even in the moment of crisis, even having just saved his child's life, she had been trained too well to believe she had the right. She looked at his chest, at the expensive white shirt visible beneath the open black jacket, at everything but his face. "Thank you," Elena said, and her voice was shattered glass, and behind her Victoria Ashford set the vase down on the table with a deliberate click that sounded like a threat being articulated. What happened next was something that would ripple outward like stone thrown into still water, creating concentric circles of consequence that would eventually reach people and places Sofia could not yet imagine. Aleandro Valenti made a decision in that moment, standing in his daughter's room on a dry October morning, looking at a woman he did not know who had just pulled his child back from the edge of nothing. He decided that invisibility was ending. Across the city, in a private office overlooking Elliott Bay, Aleandro should have been handling something else entirely. He should have been dealing with the message that had arrived 2 hours earlier, the message delivered by his consigliere Enzo, the message that contained a betrayal so profound that it required a response measured in violence rather than words. His brother Marco had been caught. Marco, who had been given everything, education, opportunity, the protection of the family name. Marco, who Aleandro had raised after their father died when Marco was just a boy. Marco had been selling family secrets to the Calabrese syndicate, feeding them information, feeding them routes, feeding them the locations of shipments and safe houses and the names of men whose loyalty had been bought with blood and obligation. The discovery had come 3 hours ago via surveillance footage. The conversation had been recorded, the money had been captured on camera, and now Aleandro sat in his office with Enzo and Vinny, the two men he trusted most, staring at frozen images of his own brother's face twisted in negotiation, in greed, in something that looked like joy at betrayal. "We have until the board meeting," Enzo said quietly. "If this becomes public, if the families find out before you address it." "I know," Aleandro said. "He is your brother," Vinny said. It was not a question. It was an observation about something immutable, something that was supposed to matter more than anything else. "Yes," Aleandro said. "He is." The three men sat in silence. Outside, Seattle's grey morning pressed against the windows like a living thing. In that silence, Aleandro made two decisions. The first decision was about his brother. The first decision would require making a choice between mercy and survival, and after what had happened with Emma, after watching a stranger pull his child back from death, the second decision suddenly felt possible in a way it had not before. The problem was that the first decision would have to be made first. "Call the family," Aleandro said to Enzo. "Tell them I want everyone at my office by 6 o'clock. Tell them I am making an announcement." "About Marco," Vinny said. "About Marco," Aleandro confirmed. Then he stood, and he walked to the window, and he looked out at the city that spread beneath him like a board game where he controlled most of the pieces, where his word was law, where his shadow fell across entire neighborhoods and business districts and lives. He had spent 15 years building this. He had spent 15 years becoming someone so powerful that mercy was a luxury he could not afford. But mercy, he was beginning to understand, might be the only luxury that mattered. He did not know that Sofia Harper's eviction notice had a red deadline written in permanent marker. He did not know that she had $134 in her bank account, that she was being hunted by a man named Douglas Hale, that a woman named Victoria Ashford had been watching her save Emma's life with the intensity of someone cataloging an enemy's face. He did not know any of these things yet. But he would. In the east wing of his mansion, Emma had stopped crying. Sofia was still holding her, rocking slightly, her rough hands gentle against the child's dark hair. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Victoria Ashford had left the room, had left the house, had left behind only the faint smell of her expensive perfume and the unspoken promise of someone who did not forget being diminished. "What is your name again?" Emma asked, her voice small and wet with tears. "Sofia," Sofia said. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Sofia thought about the eviction notice. She thought about the 12 days. She thought about the text message that had arrived at 3:08 a.m. from a man who had owned her body and was not finished collecting the debt he claimed she owed. "Yes," Sofia said. "Yes, I will be here tomorrow." She did not know she was lying. She did not know that tomorrow would bring a man in a dark suit who would deliver a message that would change everything. She did not know that the clock counting down toward her eviction was about to be joined by another clock, counting down toward something neither of them could stop anymore. She only knew that in this moment, holding this child who had almost ceased to exist, she was exactly where she needed to be. The November rain would come later. For now, there was only the sound of Emma's breathing, steady and alive and impossible, echoing through the halls of a mansion that was about to become a crossroads between two worlds that were never supposed to intersect at all. The underground poker room beneath the steakhouse smells like cigar smoke and old money. 3 weeks before Sofia's first day at the mansion, Aleandro Valenti sits at the head of the green felt table, his tailored charcoal suit open at the collar, revealing the hard geometry of his chest. A gold watch catches the light on his wrist, worth more than Sofia makes in 3 years. His face is carved from granite, eyes the color of storm clouds, a thin scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone like a blade someone dragged through his skin decades ago. Vinny and Enzo flank him, their expressions locked down tight. The air is thick, suffocating, electric with the kind of tension that precedes violence. 2 guards escort Marco Valenti into the room. He is 29 years old, Aleandro's younger brother, handsome in a way that suggests he has lived a softer life. His hands are zip-tied. His face is bruised. His eyes are red from crying. The guards force him to his knees in front of Aleandro's chair. Marco's voice breaks like fractured glass. "They threatened Emma. They said they would take her from school. I had no choice. I swear to you, I had no choice." Aleandro does not move. Does not speak. For 15 seconds, the only sound is the ice clinking in glasses and the distant hum of the ventilation system. Then Aleandro leans forward, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper, and that whisper is somehow more terrifying than any scream. "You always have a choice, Marco. You chose money over blood." The room goes absolutely still. Every man present, all 12 of them, understands what is about to happen. What happens next is not their concern. Their concern is staying invisible, staying silent, staying alive. Aleandro stands. He walks to his brother with measured steps, each movement deliberate, controlled, the way a predator approaches wounded prey. He places a hand on Marco's shoulder, and the gesture looks almost tender, almost like love. Then he nods to Vinny. The screaming starts before the guards even touch him. Marco is dragged backward, his body thrashing, his voice breaking into sounds that no longer sound human. The poker table resumes. Cards are dealt. Money moves across green felt. The only acknowledgement is the way Enzo's jaw clenches, the way Vinny's hands steady themselves on the table's edge. Aleandro lights a cigar. The match flares orange in the darkness. Smoke curls upward in perfect spirals. Family is everything, Aleandro says to the men around the table. His voice is steady, conversational, as if his brother is not being shattered in the basement below. Betray it, and you are nothing. No one responds. No one breathes loudly. The only sound is the crisp snap of cards being shuffled, the clink of poker chips, the careful exhale of controlled men learning to survive in a world where one wrong step means disappearing. Later that night, Aleandro stands in Emma's bedroom doorway. She is 7 years old, asleep under a pale pink comforter, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. She is the reason he made the choice. She is always the reason. He enters quietly, kneels beside her bed, and watches his daughter sleep. Her chest rises and falls with the innocence of a child who does not yet know that the world is cruel, that family can betray you, that survival sometimes requires you to become the kind of man who orders his own brother's destruction and then tucks his daughter into bed an hour later. Aleandro is 7 years old again for a moment, sitting in his own childhood bedroom, listening to his father downstairs making similar calculations. Mercy or survival? His father chose survival. The choice hardened him into something less than human, and then he taught that hardness to his son like an inheritance no child should receive. Aleandro whispers in Italian, barely audible. I will always protect you, Piccolina. Always. No matter what I have to do, no matter how much of myself I have to give up, you will never experience what I experienced. He kisses her forehead. She does not wake. She never knows her father is there. What Aleandro does not know, as he stands in his mansion overlooking the city lights of Seattle, is that in exactly 18 hours, a woman with $34 in her pocket and a landscape of scars across her back will save his daughter's life. What he does not know is that this woman will crack something open inside him, something he believed had died with his brother's betrayal, something he believed was gone forever. The next morning, Sofia scrubs the marble floors of the East Wing on her knees. The luxury surrounds her like a different world, crystal chandeliers casting pale light, mahogany baseboards worth more than her monthly rent, baseboards she traces with a rag because if she leaves even one streak, Mrs. Chen will make her start over. Her uniform hangs loose on her frame because it is 2 sizes too large, selected by someone who did not care about fit, only about erasure. Sofia is meant to be invisible. The uniform ensures it. She does not look up when Aleandro passes through the hallway. She has learned this lesson well in her 32 years, make yourself small enough and powerful men will walk through your life without seeing you at all. But he glances down for just a moment. He sees only the top of her dark hair, the curve of her back, the redness of her hands. He does not see the scars. He does not know yet. He keeps walking toward his meeting, toward decisions about shipments and territories and alliances, completely unaware that the universe is about to rearrange itself around this invisible woman on her knees. 18 hours later, Emma's throat closes around an object, a small plastic charm from her bracelet, and she cannot breathe. The panic that erupts through the household is immediate, primal. A child's life collapsing in real time. Mrs. Chen screams for help. The other staff members freeze, useless, terrified. Emma's face is turning blue. Sofia, folding linens in the adjacent room, hears the scream. She does not hesitate. She moves without thinking, without fear, driven by something deeper than reason. She reaches Emma in seconds, positions the girl, applies pressure to her abdomen with hands that know exactly where to push because 8 years ago, when she was trapped in a house with Douglas Hale, he broke her ribs, and when they healed wrong, she learned anatomy through agony. The object dislodges. It lands on the marble floor, so small it is almost invisible. Emma gasps, a sound like a door opening, like life returning. Sofia holds her, rocking slightly, her rough hands gentle against the child's dark hair. Aleandro appears in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He watches Sofia save his daughter with the intensity of someone cataloguing an enemy's face. He does not move. He does not speak. He simply observes this invisible woman hold his child and pull her back from the edge of death. That night, Aleandro sits in his private study with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. The city sprawls below him, thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, none of which matter to him except one, the woman with the red hands and the gentle touch. He presses a button on his desk. Vinny enters, moving quietly, used to these summoning. "I want to know everything about Sofia Harper," Aleandro says. His voice is flat, detached, but Vinny has worked for him for 12 years, and he recognizes the shift in his boss's attention. Where she lives. How much money she makes. What she is running from. Vinny nods and withdraws. 6 hours later, he returns with a manila folder. Inside are documents that tell a story of desperation. Sofia Marie Harper, 32 years old, single mother to a 4-year-old son named Lucas. She works 3 jobs, the mansion, weekend shifts at a diner, late-night cleaning at an office building downtown. She has no criminal record. She has no family in Seattle. But there is a police report filed 8 months ago, then withdrawn. Domestic disturbance. Name redacted. The report sits in her file like an unanswered question. Vinny places the folder on Aleandro's desk, his voice measured and careful. "Boss, she is running from something. This woman is hiding." Aleandro's jaw tightens. "Find out what." The following afternoon, Sofia is cleaning the library when Aleandro enters. Dust hangs in the air like suspended time, catching the light through tall windows. Sofia immediately lowers her eyes, steps backward, making herself smaller, softer, less real. "What is your name?" Aleandro asks. Sofia's voice is barely audible. "Sofia Harper, sir." "Look at me." She hesitates. Then she raises her eyes for half a second, long enough for him to see the exhaustion carved into her face, the fear that has become part of her bone structure. Long enough for him to recognize the expression of someone who has learned to survive by becoming less visible than the dust she is cleaning. "My daughter is alive because of you," Aleandro says. "I did what anyone would do," Sofia replies, shaking her head. "No." Aleandro steps closer, and she flinches almost imperceptibly. "You did what most people would not. I want to thank you properly. What do you need?" Sofia's hands twist the dust cloth. She thinks of the eviction notice with the red ink deadline. She thinks of the 12 days. She thinks of her son in Spokane, 300 miles away, waiting for a mother who can barely keep herself alive. She thinks of the $85,000 debt, money she never borrowed, never spent, but which Douglas Hale claims she owes anyway. But she says, "Nothing, sir. I am just doing my job." Aleandro studies her, then nods and leaves the room. Sofia waits until she hears his footsteps fade, then she presses her forehead against the bookshelf and allows herself exactly 15 seconds of trembling before she returns to work. That evening, Vinny reports back. Douglas Hale, 47 years old, arrested twice for human trafficking, charges dropped both times because the witnesses refused to testify. Known associate, Victoria Ashford, 38, blonde, immaculate, the kind of woman who wears diamonds to charity galas and runs a foundation that is actually a hunting ground for vulnerable women. They are looking for someone. A woman who escaped. Aleandro's voice is ice. Find her before they do. And Vinny, when you find them, you report directly to me. Not Enzo. Not the captains. Only me. Understand? Yes, boss. Vinny leaves. Aleandro stands at his office window, looking out at the city, his reflection faint in the glass. Something is shifting inside him, some code he has lived by for 15 years beginning to fracture. He does not recognize it yet. He only knows that this invisible woman with the red hands has somehow become important, has somehow become protected, and that anyone who threatens her will answer directly to him. 2 days later, Sofia is walking to the bus stop after her shift at the diner, the October cold cutting through her thin jacket. She has $17 left until her next paycheck. $17 to last 5 days. The thought makes her stomach clench with the familiar anxiety of mathematics that never adds up to survival. A black Mercedes pulls up beside her. The window rolls down. Victoria Ashford sits in the passenger seat, blonde hair perfectly blown out, cream-colored coat, diamonds glittering at her throat. Her smile is all veneers and ice. Sofia Harper, Victoria says, her voice syrup-sweet. It has been such a long time. Sofia freezes. Her body goes rigid. Victoria leans slightly out of the window. Douglas is very disappointed. You left without settling your account. $85,000, Sofia. That is what you owe. You thought you could just disappear. I do not owe him anything, Sofia whispers. Careful. Victoria's smile does not waver. Accusations are dangerous. Especially from women with your history. A woman nobody would believe. A woman who is completely alone. The car door opens. An enforcer steps out, 6'2", neck tattoos, the kind of man who specializes in making problems disappear. He does not touch Sofia, just stands close enough that she can smell his cologne and feel the heat radiating off his body. Victoria continues, her voice still pleasant. You have 14 days. $85,000. Or we go to your employer. We tell them what you really are. We have a conversation with family court about your son. We make sure you never see daylight again. Understood? The car pulls away, leaving Sofia standing on the sidewalk, shaking so hard her teeth chatter. She does not know that Vinny is parked across the street in a silver sedan, photographing everything, recording audio, capturing proof. The next morning, Aleandro is in the underground poker room when Vinny interrupts the meeting. He shows Aleandro the photographs, plays the audio from the recording device they placed beneath Sofia's apartment window. Aleandro's face does not change, but his hands curl into fists so tight his knuckles turn white. Enzo, who has known Aleandro for 15 years, leans back and mutters quietly. In 15 years, I have never seen you like this, boss. Aleandro stands. He walks to the window overlooking the city. When he speaks, his voice is controlled, measured, terrifyingly calm. Find out everything about Douglas Hale and Victoria Ashford. Every property. Every account. Every skeleton. I want them mapped completely by morning. Vinny hesitates. Boss, she is just a maid. Why? Aleandro turns, and his eyes are molten. She saved my daughter's life. That makes her family. And family is protected. The room goes silent. The unspoken understanding settles over every man present. They have just witnessed a boundary being drawn. They have just watched their boss declare war. At 4:23 in the morning, Aleandro Valenti steps out of his black Mercedes into rain that falls like needles, soaking through his tailored suit the color of midnight. No umbrella. No hesitation. Sofia stands at the mansion gate with a duffel bag that weighs nothing because she owns nothing, her letter still trembling in her hands, her face already breaking apart at the sight of him. Aleandro's voice cuts through the rain, steady and low. Going somewhere. Sofia's mouth opens and closes. She holds out the envelope. He takes it, unfolds the lined paper, reads every word while rain darkens the ink. His jaw tightens. When he looks at her again, his eyes are the color of storm clouds, and something dangerous stirs behind them. You think I let you go? His words are not a question. They are a statement of fact, the way a general announces a battle already won. You think I let them win? Sofia's voice fractures like thin ice. They took my son. They will take everything. I cannot. Aleandro steps forward. His hands, broad and scarred, frame her face with a gentleness that contradicts the violence contained in his frame. He forces her to look at him, and when he speaks, each word lands like a hammer. Listen to me. I have spent 3 days dismantling their entire operation. Every property Douglas Hale owns is being seized by the FBI right now. Every account Victoria Ashford has is frozen. Your son is being returned to your sister as we speak. I had my lawyers file emergency motions at midnight. Sofia's breath catches. What did you? What I do best, Aleandro says. He turns slightly, gestures with one hand toward the street beyond the gate. I protected my family. A black van pulls to the curb, engine idling, headlights cutting through the darkness. Vinny steps out, his neck tattoos visible even in the rain, and opens the rear doors. Douglas Hale is bound to a metal chair bolted inside the van, his wrists secured with zip ties, his mouth gagged with electrical tape. His face is a landscape of bruises and swelling. His eyes are wild, rolling in their sockets, the eyes of a man who has finally understood that the predator has become the prey. 12 men in black tactical gear move through the rain like ghosts, surrounding the vehicle, their movements synchronized, practiced, lethal. They do not speak. They do not need to. The message is written in their posture, in the way they position themselves at every exit, in the absolute certainty that no one leaves without permission. Sofia's hand flies to her mouth. What did you do? Aleandro takes her hand, presses it against his chest so she can feel his heartbeat, solid and unhurried. And you are my family now. 3 blocks away, at Victoria Ashford's penthouse in the Columbia Center, FBI agents are already moving. They enter at 5:38 in the morning while she sleeps in Egyptian cotton sheets worth more than Sofia's monthly rent used to be. Agents swarm through her bedroom door, weapons drawn, radios crackling with coded language. Victoria wakes screaming, her silk nightgown tangling around her legs, her manicured hands reaching for a phone that is no longer hers. She is dragged from the bed, her skin meeting cold tile, her designer slippers falling away as they cuff her wrists with metal that catches the dawn light. An agent, his voice flat and final, reads from a printed sheet, Victoria Ashford, you are under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy to commit extortion, wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Victoria's mouth works silently. Her foundation, her charity galas, her carefully constructed reputation as a philanthropist, all of it collapsing like a house built on sand. She tries to speak, tries to invoke lawyers and connections and the names of senators she has hosted for dinner, but the agent's voice overrides hers. No bail. No deals. You are looking at 40 years federal prison. Cameras flash outside her building. News crews, tipped off anonymously, film her being led to an FBI sedan in handcuffs, her nightgown visible to the world, her face exposed, her power evaporating like morning dew. Within 90 seconds, her empire of illusion is reduced to handcuffs and headlines. But Douglas Hale's fate is different. Darker. Aleandro made a phone call at 3:48 in the morning to a man he knows in the Calabrese family, a man with long memory and longer knives. He showed this man documents, proof that Douglas had been wearing a federal wire, proof that Douglas had offered to sell information about Calabrese operations to federal agents in exchange for immunity. Aleandro presented this proof like a gift, wrapped in the certainty that the Calabrese family does not forgive informants. Douglas is taken to a warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of building that has no windows and no witnesses. He is bound to a metal chair in the center of a concrete floor. 4 men stand in a semicircle around him, their faces carved from stone, their hands resting on the hilts of weapons he cannot see but absolutely understands are there. The Calabrese boss, a man whose name is not mentioned in polite company, speaks with the voice of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. You tried to play both sides, Douglas. That is a mistake. Douglas's chains rattle as he rides against the zip ties. No, no, please, I can explain, I can. The Calabrese boss nods once. Two men grab Douglas by the arms, drag him toward a windowless van idling near the warehouse entrance. He screams, his voice raw and desperate, begging for mercy from men who do not speak that language. His feet scrape against concrete, leaving marks, leaving evidence of struggle, leaving nothing but the memory of sound. The van doors close with a hydraulic hiss. The engine rumbles to life. The van drives away into the pre-dawn darkness and is never seen again. Douglas Hale becomes a cautionary tale, a ghost story told in the underworld, the man who tried to betray everyone and paid the price. Death would have been too quick, too easy, too merciful. This is disappearance, absolute and final, swallowed by the same darkness that created him. Back at the mansion gate, Sofia collapses against Aleandro. Her body shakes with sobs that come from somewhere deep inside, from the place where hope had been buried under years of fear. He holds her, one hand threading through her wet hair, the other pressed against her back. The rain continues, drumming against the pavement, washing the night clean. Aleandro whispers against her temple, his voice no longer commanding but tender, a voice she has never heard from him before. You are safe now. You and Lucas are safe. They cannot touch you. They cannot touch anyone you love. Sofia looks up at him, her eyes red and swollen but something new emerging in them, not hope exactly, but the possibility of hope, the way a seed contains the possibility of a forest. Why, she whispers. Why would you do all of this for me? Aleandro's hand cups her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that mingles with rain. Because you saved my daughter's life. And because somewhere in these 15 years of running an empire, I forgot what it meant to fight for someone who matters. You reminded me. The rain falls harder, colder, 1,000 tiny blades against the pavement, but Sofia does not feel it. She only feels the warmth of his hand, the solid reality of his presence, the impossible fact that she is not alone. That she has never been alone. From inside the mansion, Emma appears at the window on the second floor, her small face pressed against the glass, watching her father hold a woman who is no longer a maid, who is no longer invisible, who is becoming something entirely different. Something chosen. Something kept. The child smiles, and in that smile is the understanding that family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. 3 months later, on Christmas Eve, the Valenti mansion transforms into something Sofia never imagined she would see from inside. White lights drape the marble columns like fallen stars. Evergreen garlands wrap the grand staircase, filling the air with a sharp, clean scent of pine and cinnamon. A fire crackles in the stone fireplace, and for the first time, the warmth is not just physical, it is real. Sofia stands in the doorway of the main hall wearing a deep green dress, the fabric soft against her skin in a way the black uniform never was. Her son Lucas, 4 years old with dark curls and eyes that hold the caution of a child who has learned not to trust permanence, holds her hand. Emma runs toward them, her 7-year-old joy infectious, and pulls Lucas away before Sofia can brace for the separation. Come on. Papa said we can open one present before dinner. Emma's voice echoes through the halls, and Lucas looks back at his mother once, checking that she is still there before allowing himself to be swept away. Sofia's eyes glisten. She touches her fingertips to her mouth, breathing slowly, as if steadying herself against the weight of this moment. This was not something she permitted herself to imagine. Aleandro appears at her side, a glass of wine extended toward her. His tailored black shirt is open at the collar, revealing the strong line of his neck. He watches her face with an intensity that has softened over these 3 months but never fully dimmed. You are crying, he says. Not a question. Sofia laughs, the sound breaking into tears. I never thought I would have this. Any of this. A home. Safety. Him safe. Children laughing in the same room without fear. Aleandro sets the wine glass on a nearby table and instead takes her hand. You saved my daughter's life. You gave me back something I thought was gone, the ability to trust someone completely. Not because of obligation. Because of choice. Sofia turns to him, and the silence between them fills with the sound of children's laughter from the other room, the crackle of the fire, the soft hum of the mansion breathing around them. "I read in the news that Victoria Ashford was sentenced yesterday," Sofia says quietly. 42 years. No parole. Aleandro nods once, a gesture that closes a chapter entirely. The trafficking ring she ran with Douglas Hale imploded when federal agents seized the evidence we provided. Everything she built on cruelty, on the exploitation of invisible women, is gone. She will spend the rest of her life in a 6-by-8-foot cell, which is far more mercy than she showed her victims. And Douglas? 3 months, no sightings. The FBI closed his case file. Officially, he is a fugitive. Unofficially, Aleandro pauses, and Sofia sees the darkness that still lives in him, the capability that never fully leaves. He is no longer a threat to anyone. Sofia does not ask for details. She has learned that some knowledge carries weight that cannot be uncarried. Instead, she reaches into the pocket of her green dress and pulls out the letter. The goodbye letter. The one she wrote in that small rented room 3 months ago when she still believed that her existence was a poison that would destroy anyone who loved her. The paper is worn from being handled. She has never asked Aleandro to return it. He takes it from her hands now, unfolds it with deliberate care, and reads the words she wrote in desperation, *I love you. I have loved you since the night you held my son without fear, since the night you looked at me like I was not invisible. But my love will destroy you. My debt will consume you. My past is a shadow that reaches into every moment. So I am leaving. I am disappearing. I am choosing to protect you the only way I know how, by removing myself from your life. Aleandro folds the letter and places it on the mantel beside the pine garland. He does not tell her he has read it 100 times. He does not tell her that each reading has convinced him more deeply of what he already knows. You wrote that you love me, he says instead, his voice like thunder waiting to strike. He turns to face her fully. Do you still? Sofia's cheeks flush. She was not prepared for this directness, this refusal to let her hide. I was emotional. I was afraid. I was. Sofia. One word. Her name spoken in that voice that could command armies. Do you still love me? She meets his eyes, and for the first time in her life, she does not look away. She does not shrink. She stands in her full height and lets him see her completely. Yes, she says. Every day. In 100 ways. When I wake up and you are beside me. When you teach Lucas how to hold a fork. When I watch Emma braid your hair and call you Papa. Yes. I love you. Aleandro steps closer. His hand finds hers and intertwines with it. The gold ring on his left hand catches the firelight, a family signet, something passed down through generations of Valentis. His other hand comes to her face, and his thumb brushes across her cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicts everything the world believes about him. Then stay, he says. Not as a maid. Not as someone I am protecting. Not as an obligation or a debt that needs to be repaid. Stay as my partner. My equal. My family. Sofia's voice breaks. I have nothing to offer you. I am nobody. I have scars and a past, Anne. You are everything. His hand cups her face, forcing her to remain present in this moment. You are the woman who saved my daughter without expecting anything in return. You are the woman who survived 8 years in hell and still found the strength to be kind to a stranger. You are the woman I choose. And I am asking you to choose me. She kisses him then, and tears stream down her face, mixing with the salt of his own tears, tears she has seen only twice before in 3 months, each time a seismic shift in the universe. He breaks his own rules for her. He permits himself to feel. I choose you, she whispers against his mouth. I choose this. I choose us. Emma and Lucas burst back into the room, their footsteps thundering across the marble. Emma is holding a wrap box. Papa. Sofia. Come look at the tree. We have to decorate it together. They are a family now. Not bound by blood. Bound by choice. Bound by survival. Bound by the decision to stay when the storm arrives. Later that night, after the children are asleep, Sofia tucks Lucas into his new bed in his new room. The walls are painted a soft blue. Dinosaurs and constellations glow from stickers across the ceiling. Lucas, exhausted from laughter and sugar and the overwhelming reality of permanent safety, is already drifting toward sleep. She brushes his dark curls from his forehead and whispers, "Mama loves you, always." He murmurs something unintelligible and turns onto his side. Sofia walks down the hallway, and through Emma's open door, she sees Aleandro sitting on the edge of the girl's bed, reading aloud from a storybook. His voice is gentle, different from the one he uses to command his empire. Emma's eyes are already closing, but she is smiling. Sofia stands in the doorway, watching them, and something shifts inside her chest, not hope exactly, but the knowledge that hope is possible. That safety can be real. That family is not something you are born into but something you build, piece by piece, choice by choice. The next morning, snow begins to fall over Seattle. Sofia and Aleandro stand on the balcony of the mansion, overlooking the city as it transforms into white silence. His cashmere coat wraps around both of them, warm and impossibly soft against her skin. 3 months ago, I was ready to disappear, Sofia says quietly. 3 months ago, I was ready to let the world burn, Aleandro replies. What changed? He pulls her closer, and she feels the steady beat of his heart against her back. You did. You reminded me that mercy is not weakness. That survival is not the same as living. That family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. Snowflakes catch in Sofia's hair, melting against the warmth of her skin. For the first time in 8 years, she feels safe. Not just physically protected, but safe in the deepest sense, the knowledge that she is chosen, valued, kept. The snow falls quietly around them, washing the world clean. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. If this story moved your heart, drop a like right now and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because tomorrow we have another story that will change the way you see love, loyalty, and second chances. What would you have done in Sofia's position? Tell us in the comments below. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.